So I guess I'll explain how it feels to OD on heroin, because I'm assuming not a lot of people have experienced that, and probably a lot of people are pretty curious about it. Um, First, I'll explain how I got on heroin, just so you can get an idea of like how powerful this shit is and how much it takes over your life. Like, I mean, the first time I did heroin, I really didn't even think much of it. I had been turning it down my whole life up until this point, but so what happened was one of my best friends in New York was on heroin, and I knew that. I just, whatever. I was still. It's not going to stop me from being friends with someone. So, um, I really, he offered it to me a bunch of times. I had heard too many horror stories. I had seen the movies like Train Spotting and Basketball Diaries and how rough it is to kick heroin. And it's something I didn't want to experience. I didn't want to be addicted to heroin. I knew how addictive it was. So, but this dude was a DJ in New York City. So one night he asked me to go help him set up, and I was gonna drink free all night. And I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. I ain't been to a club in a long time. But the truth is, I was feeling a little anxiety about going out, and being around in like a social setting, because I hadn't been out in a while. So on the way there, he's picking up some heroin for himself. And I was thinking, in order to alleviate my anxiety, maybe I'll do a little bit of heroin and see how it makes me feel. So I asked him to give me just a little tiny bump. And I explained, like, yeah, I just feel a little anxious and shit. He's like, yeah, no problem, dude. Fucking puts a little bump on my hand. I snort it. And, I really didn't feel much off it. By the time we get to the club, I'm feeling a little something, but I didn't feel much. I didn't think much of it. I was just like, the truth is, it made me feel slightly nauseous. Every time I'd smoke a cigarette, I'd feel like I was going to throw up. And there's a science behind that. Every time you smoke a cigarette, apparently your blood thins and starts running, pumping through your veins a little faster or something. Um, so we're in this club. He's DJing, and I'm drinking and having a good time, and I'm definitely feeling a little something off the heroin, but it's not what I expected. It was very subtle. It was like barely there. I just felt kind of good, you know what I mean? Um, and so after that experience, I really didn't think much of heroin. I thought, like, wow, this is what everyone's making a big deal of. I had done coke before, and that shit hits you like a bolt of lightning. Like, the heroin, and I had done such a small amount that it just didn't have the impact that I assumed it would. I thought it was going to be like some sort of super strong high right off the bat, but I also did only like a small bump, and I still felt it for like the next 8 hours. But anyways, we had a good night. I stayed at his house that night. Woke up the next day. I did feel like this weird kind of like slight hangover from it that I can't even explain. It's almost like you're in a dream. Like, it's just weird. You just feel a little weird. But like I said, I didn't think much of it, and I'm living on the street at this time, so I'm surrounded by people. All my friends are on heroin, and so I'm around it all the time. People are offering me a bag of heroin to watch their stuff while they run to the bathroom, this and that, and the whole time I just never took it. I had other goals in mind. I was out there trying to conquer fears and shit. I wasn't out there to get fucked up and have a good time. Like, the reason I was out on the street was to conquer my fear of living out on the street. Mostly, I wasn't out there to get fucked up. I was out there to be sober and be present and experience it all the way. So, but after doing after doing heroin that first time, I just didn't think, I really didn't see it as a threat. So after that, when people would offer it to me, occasionally I would do a little bump. And like I said, it made me feel a little good. And I was like, how the fuck do people get addicted to this shit? It's like nothing. But then one day, this is in like, it must have been like January of like 2013. I had been doing a little bit of heroin here and there for a couple of months at this point. And it was January 2013. It's freezing cold out. It had snowed. I had no money, no cigarettes, no food. I had nothing. And I couldn't even go pick up like clips off the ground. That's when you're on the street and you ain't got no cigarettes, what a lot of people do is they'll go pick up half smoked cigarettes on the street and smoke them. What I used to do is I would pick up like 50 of them, break them all up, and roll new cigarettes, so I didn't have to put my mouth on the filters and all that shit. I would just roll a new cigarette out of it, which was still this Frankenstein disgusting cigarette made of a bunch of half-smoked Newports and Marlboros and all this mixed together. It's disgusting. So, but I couldn't even do that because it had snowed, so the ground was wet. There was all the cigarettes on the ground were useless. They were all wet and useless. So my phone was off, so I went to Starbucks to get the Wi-Fi, and I emailed my buddy, and this is the dude who was the DJ. And I was like, yo, man, I'm in a fucked up situation. I can't work. It's like 20 degrees out. I can't make no money. I can't get no cigarettes off the ground. Can I come by and just grab a cigarette off you, bro? And I never asked nobody for shit, but I just needed a fucking cigarette. And so he gets back at me. He's like, yeah, dude, come by. He's like, fucking come hang out. Yeah, I'll give you like fucking a pack of cigarettes. And I'm like, cool, bro. And I go over there, he gives me like a pack of cigarettes, fucking buys me some food, and we do some fucking heroin. But now the difference was this time we did a bunch, and we had a fucking blast. We were just chilling in his apartment, getting fucked up, fucking cackling, laughing, having a fucking good time. And this went on for like a week straight. We just hung out doing heroin for like a week. This is one of my best friends. To this day, we had a fallout, but still, I still consider him. I still love him. So, so after that, I started kind of liking heroin. So because I went from such a low point in my life to having such a fun time with him doing heroin the whole week, and just like, I mean, we just hung out and had a fucking blast the whole time. So after that experience, the weather was starting to clear up a little bit. The weather was clear and nice enough, above 30s for me to go out and make money. So I'm back to work, and he lived right by where I worked in Central Park. So a lot of the days he would come by while I was working, we'd be bullshitting, and then we'd go hang out in his apartment for a little while. And at the time, I was sleeping at an internet cafe, so I'd leave his apartment and go stay at the internet cafe. And he had a roommate who, she really ran the apartment. She was paying most of the rent and kind of letting him stay there, so he couldn't just let me stay in his fucking apartment, because he was lucky to be staying there. Like, this chick was on the verge of kicking him out constantly. So I was staying in an internet cafe, but so a lot of the days when I'd finish working, we'd go over there and I'd do a little bump of heroin, we'd play some chess and hang out, and then I'd go to the internet cafe, and it just kind of turned into a habit. And then, like, the next thing I know, one day I'm at the internet cafe, and at this point in my life, I'm starting to really look forward to the end of the day when I can go do some heroin, and like, it creeps up on you, man, and it just kind of grows on you. You acquire a taste for it, So, I wasn't doing it like every day. I was doing it maybe 3 times a week or so, and I'm not even paying for it. He's just giving me a bump when I ask him for it. And I'm really kind of starting to like it, to be honest. And I'm thinking, oh, I can do it 3 times a week, and it ain't nothing. But the next thing I know, one day I'm at the internet cafe. I hadn't done any heroin that day, and all of a sudden I can't sleep. Like, I just couldn't, and I couldn't fall asleep that night, and I was starting to feel, I just felt fucking off. I didn't know what it was. I was depressed, and I couldn't get comfortable. I mean, when I was staying at the internet cafe, we were sleeping in these like recliner chairs where we pay for an overnight, and they don't bother you. They let you sleep there. And Although eventually all the homeless people coming in there starting fights and fucking doing drugs and wreaking havoc, eventually it all got shut down. But so at this point it was still going. So I couldn't fucking get comfortable. I couldn't get to sleep. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I just knew I didn't feel right. And so then very kind of abruptly around 6 in the morning, I just kind of fell asleep. And I woke up the next day and I felt all right. And I realized that I had been in a slight state of withdrawal because I hadn't done any fucking heroin the day before. And I was like, holy shit, I just kicked heroin, you know what I mean? But it was so slight and it was so kind of, it, it only lasted that one night. So I was thinking to myself, wow, I need to be careful with this shit because I kind of just got over that and I don't really need it right now. But now I'm starting to get it, you know what I mean? I'm starting to see that it is very addictive, you know. So from that point on, I started only doing it like maybe twice a week. But eventually you get to a point where you just have a rough day, like, "Nah, fuck it, I'm gonna do some dope today." And the next thing you know, you're doing it every fucking day. And then the next thing you know, you can't even fucking function without it. For me, the next thing I know, I'm buying it. I'm not even fucking, I mean, it's $10 a bag in New York City at this time, and it's good, strong fucking heroin. So that's how I got addicted to it. But the thing with me is, you know, I had done larger amounts of heroin at this point, and I realized that I like to do just a little bit, because if you do just a little bit, it kind of revs you up. It doesn't knock you out. If you do just a little too much, it'll knock you out. You'll be higher, but you'll also be like you know, you'll be nodding out and you'll be fucking out of it. But if you do just the right amount, it revs you up. So that's what I used to do. I used to buy a bag of dope and I would just do little tiny bumps all throughout the day just to kind of rev me up and make me feel good, you know? I didn't want to do any more than that and be like knocked the fuck out. I had experienced that before. I prefer to just be a little revved up. But eventually you get to a point where it's you're just your tolerance starts going up. You start doing more and more. You start wanting to get more fucked up. Eventually you're gonna be the one nodding out. Like, there's no, it's inevitable. um so the way I ended up ODing was, I was doing my little dope, hanging out in Starbucks, charging my phone, and I had done just a little too much, I guess. And I'm sitting there fucking nodding out, looking like a fucking dope head, man. And they even noticed me, and they're like, "You can't be sitting in here doing like looking like that." And I'm like, holy shit, I've turned into one of these fucking dope head homeless zombies that can't even sit in Starbucks without being noticed. It's like everyone knows I'm on fucking drugs. So I left there. I didn't want to be sitting there looking like that. And I was sleeping outside of a church at this point. I had ditched the internet cafe. There was too much crazy shit happening there. People all stealing from each other. I managed to never get anything stolen from me, but I didn't want to keep pushing my luck in there. There's a lot of desperate fucking homeless lunatics in there, and I was friends with a lot of them, but there was also, and another thing, there was fucking, a lot of the people in there had bed bugs, and I didn't want to be around that shit. I didn't want no fucking bed bugs on me. So, yeah, bed bugs is a real thing in New York City. It's like, I never even knew they were a real thing until I lived on the street in New York, and I realized that this is actually a thing that people deal with. Um, so I stopped staying there mainly because of all the fucking lunatics and the bed bugs and the filth and the disgusting situation. So my buddy Ilya, who, you ever seen that movie Heaven Knows What? It's about Ilya. They made a movie about him and Harley, his girlfriend. Ilya, he's not the one who got me on heroin, but he was probably my best friend on the street. And in that movie, Heaven Knows What, I gotta say, that kid played Ilya pretty good. That was how Ilya, like, that was how he was. But so Ilya had left me. He ended up getting a room from like the homeless outreach people, and he left me his spot at this church on the Upper West Side, which is one of the best spots on the street. I ended up staying in that spot on and off for like the next 7 years. So it was a great spot. So anyways, I leave Starbucks. It's probably like 10, 11 at night, and I go to my spot in front of the church, I do the rest of my dope, and this is when I OD'd. So I'm just sitting there fucking nodding out and shit. And then all of a sudden, I wake up because I wasn't breathing. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, so, see, I didn't realize that when you OD on heroin, I assumed like your heart stopped or something, you know? But what happens is you're so fucking wasted that when you pass out, your body doesn't even breathe. You're so out of it that you're fucking your brain isn't even functioning enough to breathe. So that's how people OD on heroin. They're so fucked up that they nod out and their brain doesn't breathe and they just suffocate. That's what happens. So I'm sitting there, and every time I nod out, what's waking me up is the fact that I'm not breathing, and I'm alone on the street. And I realize that if I nod out, I'm gonna fucking die. Now, fortunately for me, I was slightly OD'd, but this is where I really learned a harsh lesson about ODing on heroin. So it's not an unpleasant experience. I was high as a fucking kite, and the truth is, I didn't even fucking care. I was so fucked up. I was just like, I said to myself, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. I don't even fuck. Was such a chore at that point that I really didn't even care that much. I didn't want to die, but I didn't care. I really just didn't fucking care. And I said to myself, like, it's up to God, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna try to stay awake. I'm not just gonna fucking lay down and die. So I was trying to keep myself up, but I kept nodding out and waking up from lack of oxygen. And this went on for a couple of hours until it started to wear off, and then I was kind of out of the woods. But that's what it's like to OD on heroin. And my buddy Ilya, who I mentioned before, he must have OD'd for 5 times the whole time I knew him. He ended up dying of a OD. In the movie, heaven knows what, they have him dying from something else, but the truth is he died of a heroin overdose. And he didn't even, when the movie came out, he was still alive. He ended up dying afterwards. But yeah, most of the people I hung out with back then are dead of a heroin overdose because, you know, life was so brutal on the street that a lot of them, just like, they felt like me. They were just like, whatever, if I fucking die, I die. You know what I mean? But that was the one and only time that I OD'd. I was real careful after that. And fortunately for me, I quit heroin right when the fucking fentanyl was starting to take over. I used to try to get fentanyl because it was stronger and it would get me more fucked up, but but it was only around occasionally when I was doing heroin. And fortunately for me, by the time I was out of that scene, the fentanyl was, you know, taken over. But by then I was on Suboxone and I was kind of done with heroin anyway. I guess that's about it. But yeah, that's what it feels like to OD. It's not unpleasant. You won't even fucking notice. You wouldn't even know. You would just die, and you wouldn't even know it. You would suffocate, and you wouldn't even know it. Because you're just so fucked up that you're in another fucking world, and you wouldn't feel a thing. And at my buddy's house, when people would OD there, and it happened, people, if you're new to heroin and you think you're gonna do a big line of it, you're gonna fucking OD almost 100% of the time. Like, you gotta, if you ain't never done heroin, you better do a tiny fucking amount. In fact, don't fucking do it at all. But like in Pulp Fiction, when she does that fucking rail, she thinks it's cocaine, but it's heroin. Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. But you know, it's really not like I've seen a few people OD. When they would OD at my buddy's apartment, we'd fucking carry them downstairs and call a fucking ambulance, and you know, I mean, we'd make sure they didn't fucking die. But it was like protocol, man. Like, when you're dealing with people who don't know what the fuck you're doing, everyone's not going to fucking jail over it, dude. They're gonna fucking get you to a fucking hospital and go back about their lives, you know what I mean? And they're not gonna fucking be calling the cops or an ambulance to their address. They're gonna fucking bring you out on the street and call the fucking ambulance, and that's, that's how it's gonna go. Ain't nobody going to jail over it, because the people who do heroin, they're just like, man, don't fuck my shit up. You better do it right. The people who sell heroin, when people OD on their shit, they get fucking mad, dude. Like, the people who were dealing around that part of Manhattan, they didn't even want to sell to people like Ilya, because he was known for ODing. So they're like, I don't want him fucking dying on my shit, dude. I don't need that on my conscience. I don't need that. I just don't need that kind of fucking attention. You know what I mean? So no one likes when people are fucking ODing and shit, But and then one of the ways that a lot of people die from heroin is they'll quit, and then they'll think like, oh, I'll just do a little bit just for old time's sake, and they end up doing, they want to get fucked up, and they think that they know heroin, So what they'll do is they'll do the same amount they used to do, or just a little less, and they're fucking dead. They OD. That's what happened to fucking Evan. He's another one in that movie, Heaven Knows What. He's always hanging out with Ilya. I used to us three used to get fucking dope every fucking day. But so, I'm not in the movie. The truth is, I wasn't around like that. The only people I hung out with, I know a lot of people in that movie, but mainly I was hanging out with Ilya and Evan. And so what happened with Evan was his mom sent him down to a rehab in Florida to get clean. He came back to visit New York, got himself a bag of dope, fucking OD'd and died. And fucking, it's a sad situation, but that's what happens, man. Fucking, heroin is a powerful drug. It's more powerful than any other drug, as far as I know. So, yeah, I mean, don't do it. Like, you see my experience. I can't. I was dipping my toes in the water, just like, next thing I know, my whole fucking life revolved around it for like 4 or 5 fucking years. Let's see. The first time I did heroin was around 2000, end of 2013, I guess. I was on it, and Suboxone and all that. When I finally got off all that shit was April 2019, was the last time I did any Suboxone. So what's that, like 6 years of my life down the fucking drain with that shit? So yeah, learn from my mistakes and don't do the shit. But that's it for this video. I guess I'll see y'all in the next one. The first time I did heroin was around the end of 2012, and then I got off it sometime in 2017, I guess, probably towards the end of 2017, and then was on Suboxone until April 2019. So altogether about 7 years. I wasted doing that shit. So, and I came in like very careful, very slowly, no intention of being addicted to it, knowing how dangerous it is. So my point is, don't even fuck with it. Don't. Everyone thinks they're gonna be the one who's able to just do heroin occasionally, and everyone I knew on it got on it the same way. It like thinking they could just do it occasionally. It doesn't work that way, dude. The shit takes over your life. It's a powerful thing. It's fucking. I can't even put it into words, but if you start fucking with it, it's gonna take over, and you're gonna wish you never fucked with it. I'm gonna make a video. Like, I made a video about how I got off of heroin. I'm gonna do a detailed video about how to get off Suboxone, because when I was on Suboxone, everyone was always telling me, oh, you're better off just kicking heroin and this and that, and like a lot of the negative shit I heard, like people telling me it's like kicking Suboxone is worse than kicking heroin and all this shit. It's harder to get off. I need to make a video and explain exactly how I did it. This way other people can, because I'm telling you, that's the way to go. Like, not methadone. If you kick heroin cold turkey, more power to you, but odds are you're going to end up back on it again. The Suboxone is the way to go, because it prevents you from doing heroin. So if you're going to quit heroin, you're probably going to have to be on Suboxone for a couple of years, but a lot of people don't want to do that, because then they're addicted to Suboxone and they hear all these horror stories about kicking Suboxone. But there's a way to do it, and it can be done, and I'm going to make a video detailing it exactly how I did it. and you should be able to do it. And it's not painless, but it's doable. It's definitely fucking doable. 1000% doable. Anybody can do it. So I'll make another video about that. Anyways, I don't know what the next video is going to be. We'll see what it ends up being. But eventually down the line, I'll make that video about how to get off Suboxone. So see y'all next week on whatever it ends up being.